Hi everyone, welcome to a relaxed look at Kerbal Space Program. Hey, I timed that pretty good with the moon rising up over the horizon of Kerbal there. Worked out pretty well. Kerbal Space Program was released just in its final form 1.0 just a few days ago on April 27th, I believe. Although the game has been around in beta and in alpha forms for quite some time, several years, I believe, before then. I have a good amount of experience with this game, but I am not really very good at it. In that I've repeated the same opening steps of the campaign 5 or 6 different times, just because each time I want to load it up, I get really intimidated, and there's so much stuff to do. But I wanted to kind of run through some of the basics for you, just if you've never seen anything about it. I think this would be a good game to play to relax, although there are some high stress moments for sure. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the different options here. You have training, which will kind of teach you all of the basics. And when I say basics, I really do mean basics. There's a lot that this game does not prepare you for, so if you are interested in checking it out, you need to be prepared for somewhat of a learning curve. You're going to be spending some time on wikis, spending some time on forums, watching Twitch. There's some amazing Twitch streamers out there that stream this game each evening, every single evening, really. Their goal is to teach, kind of help people. If you can't tell by the title, by the way, Kerbal Space Program is about you taking control of a fledgling space program on the planet of Kerbin. These little guys here are called Kerbals. I believe this is Valentina Kerbal. I believe that's her name. Your goal is to take a space program from its infancy and explore the star system. All the different planets and moons. So as I said, there's training, there's scenarios if you want to just dive directly into a mission, and these are probably for more advanced people, so I wouldn't recommend starting out trying to do the scenarios. You have things like capturing asteroids, that's where an asteroid's going to fly past the planet. You have to send a rocket up, dock with it, attach it, grab onto it, and bring it into orbit around Kerbin so that you can start mining from it. An EVA, it's extra vehicular activity. That's where you just kind of play as Jebediah Kerman flying around his spaceship in space. And we may actually run through this scenario just so you can kind of see what it looks like to be out into space. Impending impact, a moon's heading straight a spacecraft is heading straight for the moon. It's spelled M-U-N here. And you have to see if you can avoid it instead of crashing into it and get Jebediah Kerman back home safely. And whatnot. You have a few different things for there. You can also start a new game, and there's 3 different modes. There's Sandbox, which, as you can imagine, unlocks every spacecraft, every piece, every bit of technology for you to just build and explore to your heart's content. You have Science, where you have to use scientific modules, thermometers, pressure sensors, barometers, all that stuff, and you have to do all these measurements and collect all the science, not only on Kerbin and its moons, but on every planet in the solar system. By earning science, you can unlock additional pieces. So obviously you'd start small, you'd build up to a grand science collecting machine that's just on all the planets. And then you have career mode, which is the science mode, but you also have to worry about things like money, which can run out, reputation, which is obviously public opinion. You get contracts. So I guess you could maybe think of this not as like a governmental space program, but like a privately owned space program. You have contracts that people will come to you and say, "Hi, I would like you to take a temperature reading at, a suborbital flight around Kerbin," or, I need you to break a new speed record or something. It doesn't really matter where these contracts come from. The idea is they come in, you perform them, and when you do, you get money to build more spaceships. You get science to unlock new parts, and you get reputation boosts, which are useful when you start having accidents and Kerbins under your control start dying. I don't think I'm going to take a look at this yet. I probably will in a little while. For now, let's actually jump into a scenario. This one seems very simple, just to get an idea, just some of the cool moments in this game. So we're in EVA in Kerbin orbit. Jebediah Kerbin on EVA about 40 meters away from his ship. Let's go ahead and click start, and we'll load in. Alright, you can ignore this thing here. I'm not sure actually why it's even open. Go ahead and just hide it down here. Alright, here we go. So again, this is just a scenario. Here's Jebediah Kerbin. There's the planet Kerbal. There's the moon, MUN. And there's the spacecraft. And again, this is just a scenario. There's nothing else going on. If we press M, you can see the planet. You can see the spaceship and Jebediah Kerbin. Jebediah Kerbin moving at a velocity of 2,159 meters per second. And then the Orbiter 1 space vessel orbiting at just about the same speed. Very similar velocities as well. The blue circle shows us that we are in an orbit. So this the simulation here, it is full physics, and it's based on it's not a one-for-one model of how physics work, like orbital mechanics, will work, but it is very close. It is very close. And so you have things like stable orbits that you have to consider, speed, how high up you are. Kerbin's atmosphere, I believe, ends at 70,000, so we're well above it. So you can tell just by mousing over the highest point and the lowest point here that we're well above 70,000 meters. So we're good. We could actually, if we wanted to, we could just fly around here all day. There's no concept like oxygen and things like that for now, but there is this little thing called propellant, and this is what Jebediah can use to fly around. Whoa, now, don't go too far. Don't go too fast. Back it up. Back it up. As you can see, as I'm using this EVA propellant, the amount is going down. So I have a limited amount. Oh, no, I don't want to fly away. Let's just kind of even it out. Anyway, these are the kind of vistas you can expect as you play. Lots of time spent out in space, performing delicate maneuvers, building space stations, landing on the moon, harvesting resources and fuel from the moon. Let's see, before I continue to drift, oops. That's fine, that's pretty close. Let me continue to zoom out. There's the moon, Mun. And unlike Earth, Kerbal actually has a second moon as well, called Minmus. So this is your local planetary system here. And if you continue to zoom out, you have the solar system. It's not exactly like ours, but there are some similarities. You have Eve, which is one orbit in, and then Moho, which is very close to the sun. You can double click on a planet, set as target, focus view. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do there. So Kerbin, just like Earth, is the third planet from the sun. You have Duna, which I guess would be like Mars, Dress, Jewel, and Elu. Each one of these is going to be similar to a planet in our solar system. I guess this one's supposed to be kind of like Pluto. Perhaps it's tiny and way out there. And let's see. I believe Jewel, yeah. Let's take a look at Jewel here. Focus on that. Jewel has a massive number of moons around it. Looks like it's a gas giant. I don't actually know if you can land on the gas giant. I'm not sure. I'm guessing you can't. But you could land on its moons. Lots of interesting stuff up there. Anyway, let's see. Let's do one more thing. I will. Good thing I didn't drift too far. Let's see if I can't find the hatch. Do I have lights? I guess not. No, I don't have lights. Let's see, is the hatch right there? Let's just do a quick landing. There's our sun, of course, looking all pretty. There we go. I'll press F to grab. And then I climb towards the hatch. And then I can board. There you go. Now I'm in the spaceship. And you can see in the bottom right, look, Bill and Bob were both in there as well. Now once you're inside the spaceship, you're going to get a variety of information. Ignore this stuff up here, by the way. This is part of a mod. KSP is fully moddable. You can add new parts. You can use it to get all kinds of information. Like this is, I believe it's called Kerbal Engineer. I apologize if that's not the perfect name, not the exact name, but you can use this, as you can see, to get all kinds of statistics. Apoapsis height, which is like the highest point of my orbit, periapsis height, which is like the lowest point, how long it's going to take to get to each one, inclination, which is how close you are to like an equatorial orbit, like perfectly even with the equator, eccentricity, which is like how close to a circle you are. As you can see, we are pretty darn close to a circle. All kinds of stuff, all kinds of stats. I'm not particularly good at reading those stats. But that's okay. So let's see, what could we do? Well, let's take a look. In the bottom left here is your staging, just like the space missions. And I kind of use the Apollo missions because they're the most usually well known, like Apollo 13. You know, the Tom Hanks movie. You know, lots of people have seen that. You know, you had staging when you launched a rocket. You know, you started off with the huge boosters that would get you up out of the atmosphere, and then those would drop away, and then you would, you know, get up in orbit and drop additional boosters away, and just kind of till you were left with a tiny little pod, kind of like this, that could go out to the moon, or perform experiments in orbit. And obviously, we still have something very similar today, or at least we did until recently. But it all behaves the same way here as well. So while I'm in the pod, I can rotate. And I can spin. I can actually move to a first-person view inside. And all the important things are here. You've got your vertical speed here, and I believe this is your altimeter. And then you have your nav ball, orbital speed. There's your radar altitude right there. So that's how close you are to like the actual physical ground, not like an absolute altitude, which would be down here perhaps. So you could actually, if you wanted to, fly the ship from here. See, I'm rotating the ship around. Oh, there's some other Kerbin. Looks like I'm in the pilot seat right in the middle. Not sure where the other guy is. He might be on the other side. Anyway, here are our stagings down here, as I was talking about before. Got a little sidetracked. At the bottom, the most recent stage is the engine that I'm currently on right here, which is this engine. This Poodle liquid fuel engine. And down on the bottom, you have your nav ball, which will point you to all kinds of interesting things. The nav ball has several symbols on it. As you can see, there's like a purple triangle. There's some kind of crosshair looking thing. Another type of triangle. Each one of these has a very distinct meaning, and I'm not going to go over all of them because there's a lot to this game, and there's a lot more to cover than just what I could in a relaxed, look at. But I will talk about this particular symbol right here. This symbol, when I'm lined up with it, means that I am aiming directly at where I am currently headed, or the direction that my current orbit is taking me. So if I press M and focus on... Nope. Let's get the orbiter. Nope. There. There we go. Okay. So you can bring up the nav ball here. Now, as you can see by the slow-moving orbiter 1, I'm heading west to east around the planet. With my nav ball lined up perfectly with this particular symbol, when I come out of map mode, as you can see, I am traveling west to east. Similarly, this symbol, which looks very similar, oops, I went too far. It's got the same coloring, but it is slightly different. This symbol will point me directly away from my current path, or my current orbit, where it's going to take me. So, the way this would work is if I wanted to increase my orbit, I would point toward the path that I'm currently facing, and then I would throttle up. So let me line this up. I will hold shift to increase throttle. Oh, my stage isn't activated yet. Let me throttle down, activate. Oh. Okay, you know what? I didn't activate. Instead, apparently it was already activated. Instead, what I did was I detached myself from my rocket. The only stage I have left now, it's just 3 Kerbals floating in this pod. There goes my fuel. There goes my engine. There goes my way home. So what I've just done is I have stranded Bill, Jebediah, and Bob Kerman in orbit. Whoops. They are now stuck in orbit. There's just literally nothing I can do, other than perhaps mount a rescue mission where I build a spaceship down on the ground that can hold these 3 poor Kerbals, and I could fly up and I could dock with them and I could try to rescue them. Well, that's a shame. I was going to try to show you how to mess with your orbits and do all kind of crazy stuff like that, but I can't do that here, as my only source of fuel and propulsion has just left me. So why don't I go back to the main menu and we'll just start a sandbox mode. Call it relaxing. You can, for every single mode, change your difficulty. Each one allows or restricts certain things. So on easy, you can revert flights if something goes bad. You can quick save and quick load. If your crew dies, they'll respawn. Your facilities are indestructible. So if you accidentally crash a rocket into your mission control, you don't have to worry about repairing it before it will work correctly. Hard basically disables all that. You can't revert a flight if something goes wrong. If you build your space plane incorrectly and it blows up on the launch pad, guess what? You've just lost all your Kerbals. You can't quick save, you can't quick load, you just have to accept the consequences. If we were playing a hard hard sandbox just now, when I accidentally staged incorrectly and blew off my propulsion, that would be it. Those Kerbals would truly be stuck until I went up and saved them. We're going to do easy. You can do custom as well. In sandbox, there's no money amount. There's no science amount. But if we were doing a career mode, you could have science sliders, money sliders to kind of tell you how much you're going to get. But we're just going to do easy. We're going to accept, and we are going to start. You could pick your flag as well. I did forget to do that, but you could pick a flag if you wanted to. So instead of starting out in space, you start at the Kerbal Space Center. There's a huge variety of things to do here. All these buildings. In career mode, you actually have to level up these buildings. They don't start as well equipped as they currently are. So let's go over these real quickly. This is the tracking station. Just like the map that I was looking at before when I was in orbit, this has a map of the entire solar system, including some interesting things, unknown objects. These are actually asteroids that, as you can scan them, there pops up another one. They actually will sit here. I believe how this works is they will sit here, not moving, until you scan them, or until you choose to look at them. And then when you do, it will actually activate and it will begin its orbit. So they want this, obviously, so that it's easy to always have asteroids available if you want to add them. This is a tracking station, as I said. So any spaceship that you have in orbit, any long-range probe, any moon base, any any um, any rover on some faraway mission will show up here, and you can jump to one at any point. So you can truly build a space program where you are sending out rovers, sending out people to harvest resources, sending out probes just to look at stuff. This is how you keep track of everything, and you select them. Also, if something goes horribly wrong, you can abort a mission, which basically just means cut it off, get rid of it. We no longer care about this piece, it's just left to float into space. We have the launch pad here, and then we have the runway for airplanes and space planes. Here we have the research facility. This facility is closed because we're in sandbox mode, but I'll show you that when we go into career. You have the hiring mode, and we already have 4 available who are masters at everything they do. In career mode, they don't start out. They start out as novices. They don't start out as masters. You actually have to go on missions to increase their abilities. Pilots allow you to have special. They don't let you do anything more, but they do make piloting easier. They'll let you automatically point to certain areas. They'll help you control stability of your rocket. The better they are, the better that works. Engineers, for the purpose of campaign modes, will let you gather science quicker. So if you have an engineer on your crew and you perform a science experiments, you will get better science results, more science to spend on upgrades. Sorry, that's a scientist. That's what a scientist does, not an engineer. An engineer, like good Bill Kerman here, can repair pieces if they break in orbit or if they break while you're down on a planet. Obviously, having something break when you are thousands and thousands of kilometers from home is not ideal. So an engineer can, in some instances, repair stuff. You have a wide variety of people to select from. This is not a big deal in sandbox mode, as if these guys die, they'll just respawn, so it doesn't matter. But in like a hardcore mode, your applicants are going to be very important. That was it. The administration facility lets you set a focus using money. It's kind of like your PR team, I guess. So you can boost reputation, you can boost the amount of contracts that come in, the type of contracts, I believe, you can adjust. Like a focus on gaining money, things like a focus on gaining science, but things like that, I believe. We'll take a closer look at that. The mission control facility is where you would get your contracts. People would come to you and say, "Hi, I want to fly in outer space. Here's X amount of dollars that I'll give you once you do that." And you take them up into outer space, or you break a certain sound barrier limit. Last 2 buildings are the hangars, where you build your spacecraft. Space plane hangar, where you build space planes and airplanes, and then the spacecraft hangar. Go ahead and load into there. The vehicle assembly building. So here's where you build your rocket to send into outer space. I want to build a pretty simple rocket. It may not get into it'll get into space, but it may not necessarily orbit. That's okay if it doesn't. We'll try it out. We're gonna get a basic command pod. Every single every single structure has to have a command pod. That's where the people are gonna sit. You can pick something up and middle click to get a ton of stats on it. The reaction wheel torque, the resources, the science experiments, everything. Middle clicking will give you a ton of information. How much each piece will cost, the mass. Remember that this is a physics simulation, so things like mass, thrust, all that, atmosphere density, it all matters. And so if you really got into the details of this game, you could build a perfectly designed rocket, just like NASA does. It's very cool. I'm not gonna do that. No way. Alright, so there's my command pod, and in it we're gonna put we'll do Jebediah. That's fine. We'll leave Jebediah in there. Let's see, we have fuel tanks, engines, command and control, structural, things like wings, adapters, girder segments, aerodynamics for like your space planes. utilities, things like docking ports, grabbing units, um, lights to go on your ship. Here's what we need right here. Mark 16 parachute. We want to put a parachute right on top. I guess we'll build something similar to the Apollo missions. We'll just build one long, straight up and down. Obviously, there were other non-Apollo missions that used a similar format, but again, I'm just using that because it's well known. We're just going to do more of a straight up and down kind of pod. Now, we need a heat shield for our... Oh, the last tab, by the way, is science. So I was saying all these things you use to perform your science experiments. But for now, we are going to need a heat shield. So let's find that. Figure it'd be in utility. Docking ports. Wheels. Solar panels. As you can see, there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot to do. Aerodynamics, maybe? Here we go. Heat shields. Way too big. Still way too big. There we go. Heat shield will obviously prevent us from burning up in the atmosphere when we return. Now, we need a stack decoupler, which is right here. Oh, nope, way too big. There we go. Stack decouplers do exactly what they sound like. They decouple the stack. So we're going to have a big stack of things, of rocket engines and rocket fuel. We're going to use decouplers. They have like miniature explosions in them. If I middle click, see? Mass ejection force. This is how strongly ejection force will be when the explosives detach, or when the explosives go off and it will detach. I could right click if I wanted to, change the amount of force. So if I wanted no explosive separation, I could just put it down to 0. The pieces would detach, but they would still float right there next to each other. It's actually not what I want. I actually want them to break apart so that the pieces that are flying with me don't run into me, right? Because that would obviously cause a death or two, perhaps. So, this is the part that will be returning with me back down to Earth, or back down to Kerbin. So, let's put a fuel tank on there. We obviously have some gigantic fuel tanks. Let's not do anything that big, at least yet. Here we go. That's a good looking fuel tank. And then we're going to put an engine. We'll get this Terrier engine. That does not have the best thrust. As you can see, when you mouse over, you can get... What happened? Oh, there. Game accidentally minimized. You probably didn't see that, but I did. Wait a minute. I think we're crashing. Well, this is unfortunate. The game did just enter 1.0, and there are some bugs that are being worked out. I think that's what happened. Alright, let me be right back, and we'll pick up where we left off. Alright, well, we're back. I've reassembled our structure, our spaceship. Now, as I was saying before, you can see next to the picture of the image on the pop-up, the max thrust, ASL, and max thrust vac. ASL means when you're within an atmosphere, and vac means when you're in a vacuum. So, as you can see, this Terrier liquid fuel engine will generate 14 thrust when you're in an atmosphere. That's pretty terrible. It'll generate 60, however, when you're out in vacuum. Since this is my engine that I'm going to be using while out in the vacuum, that's pretty good, I think. It's pretty good. So I will keep this here. So we're going to need another stack decoupler. Let me find it. There we go. Gonna need some more liquid fuel. We're gonna need a bigger engine now to get us out of the top of the orbit. Wow, look at that guy. That's huge. Don't need that much. Just like in real life, you can't go too fast either. So strapping some gigantic engine on like this will probably push us too fast for our mass. So I think we can go with this guy, the swivel. And then let's add some additional, let's see, where are they? Probably structural. Yes. Here we go. Just like you can have stack decouplers, you can have radial decouplers, which will let you attach rockets to the sides and blast off that way. Now, as you can see, I'm only attaching one. If I click here, it will only attach one. But if I come down to this circle here and activate symmetry mode, the 2 hash marks means 2 symmetry, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess 6 is the most. Yes. And you can see here now, I would be putting on 1, 2, yeah, 6. I think let's do 4 symmetry for now. Like that. This option here, angle snap, if I click and drag, you'll see they're snapping to angles. But if I turn that off, I can freely place them anywhere. Turn that back on. We'll attach right about here. Now we want some solid fuel boosters to help get us off the ground. They're going to be here somewhere. Perhaps. No, they're here. Here they are. A solid fuel booster, unlike, that's huge. We probably do not need that. Well, we could try. But chances are we're going to overheat. Solid fuel boosters cannot be deactivated once activated. Wow, look at that sucker. That's a liquid fuel engine, though. So you have to keep that in mind. Once you activate a solid fuel booster, you cannot deactivate it. It must continue to burn until it's out of fuel. So we could attach 4 there like that. And then let's add one more thing. Let's move this a bit closer to the ground. I think this rocket could get into orbit. It may not. We're going to try though. I'm going to add some stability clamps. I think they'll just attach right there, just like that. Now you have a ton of other options while messing with building your spacecraft. You can select an offset, so you can move pieces in an offset. They can clip into other pieces sometimes, and that's usually okay, but that can cause explosions on occasion. So always make sure you know what you're doing if you try to put try to mess with the offset and put one piece clipping inside another. You can also rotate a piece. So if I wanted to rotate a certain piece a certain way, I'm not going to mess with that right now, because really the only things on here are the fuel booster, or the rocket boosters, excuse me. And if they're not straight up, I'm going to spin and crash and die. So I don't want to mess with that at all. Alright, let's check our staging. Remember, our staging will happen in a specific order, starting with 6 and counting up until 0. So when you mouse over the stage, the piece that's going to happen will highlight. So you can see these stabilities pillars here, these launch stability enhancers are highlighting. So my first stage will activate those. Second stage will activate the 4 rockets around the edge. I kind of want that all to happen at the same time though, so I'm going to drag them in. So now when I stage 5, both the clamps will release and these 4 rockets will fire. It looks like for some reason they're split up, but the next stage will detach the 4 clamps so that once these run out of fuel, they will fall away. But I also then want to fire my main rocket down here, my swivel, so I will drag that into the same one. Cool. Now when that's out of fuel, as you can see when I'm mousing over, this stack decoupler is going to detach. But I actually think I want to leave this engine here, our small engine, on a separate stage. I don't want to put that on the same one. And then finally, our last decoupler will detach our final bit of empty fuel tanks and our last bit of engines, and our parachute will activate. But I actually want to put this in a different stage as well. I don't want to activate my parachute so high up in outer space. I don't think that can hurt it in any way, but it might burn up with re-entry. So I want to make sure that I break the stack so that only the pod is returning, and then once I'm through, let the heat shield absorb all the heat, and then once I'm through, then I can trigger the parachute. So I think this is good to go. Again, I don't know if it will make orbit, but let's see. Let's go ahead and title it the Relaxing Maybe Orbiter. The Maybe Orbiter. And let's put a note. Will this go into space? There we go. We don't really know. We can set the mission flag. You can create your own as well and upload them into a specific folder. So if you really have a symbol that you want to put on the here, it will show up right here. So change this to the hexagon, accept, and now you can see the hexagon symbol is showing up in the background and on the ship itself. So we'll go ahead and save, and let's head out to the launch site. I think we can get into space. Maybe. Alright, so we're on our launch pad. Our staging is set up correctly. You use Shift to increase throttle and Control to decrease throttle. You can also just press X to kill it immediately. Remember that the solid rocket boosters, the 4 on the outside, will burn no matter what. I can't slow those down, no matter what my throttle is set to. So that's fine. It does not matter. Press C to get a first-person view of Jebediah Kerman. The gimbal is freaking out right now. That's okay. He's in his pod. He's ready to go to space. He's got his spacesuit on. I think we're good to go. You can see up here all the resources. Electric charge. This is what we can use to rotate the craft when it's in space. There are these things called reaction wheels that spin and create torque. That's how you can kind of spin in space, by using electrical charges. You can regain that electrical charge using solar panels, things like that. Monopropellant, this I actually won't be using at all. I could have emptied it if I wanted to. Doesn't really matter. This is my heat shield, my liquid fuel, oxidizer, and my solid fuel. So, I think we're ready. Got a good looking sun. Alright, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can get up to space. Ready? 3, 2, 1, lift off. So there go my solid rocket boosters. Another thing important, you can turn on stability enhancement, which is this little icon right here. I can do that because I have a pilot. And eventually you can learn to do it anyway using specific technologies. But there go my solid rocket boosters. They got me off the launch pad. Oh, look at that. Uh-oh. One might fall and hit the Space Center. I think it did. That's okay. It's not going to hurt us too much. As you can see, I'm actually starting to gain some shearing effects. You can see them coming off the craft. Oh, look at that. There's the moon. That may make a cool screenshot right there. Look at that. That's awesome. I don't think we'll be visiting the moon today. Alright. This number right here is showing how fast I'm going. So 500 meters per second, 550, 560. And then here's my altitude. This is showing me how high up into the atmosphere I am. We're going to start, I think, making a turn so that we can start perhaps breaking out into orbit. Or if something horrible goes wrong, we'll fall into the ocean instead of back onto the Space Center. As you can see, as we turn and we continue along this path, remember this symbol, as I was saying, it points to where we are going, or where we will be going, where our orbit will take us. As you can see, it's actually moving to the right. It's actually following where I'm going because I'm applying force in a further position. Alright, so we just lost that engine, but look, we're still climbing. Look at our height. If we press M, we can see, look at that. That's our highest point. Our apoapsis is at 100,000 meters. It's actually pretty good. That's well up out of the atmosphere. It'll take some time to get there, but we can go ahead and detach this stage now because there's nothing left. There you go. The explosive charge pushed this empty shell off, and now we are a little bit lighter. Actually, we're a good deal lighter. We've passed 70,000, so we're officially in space. Alright, I'm going to point directly toward the horizon, which is this kind of line right here on the ball. And I've still got my SAS locked in. If I had tried to take off without stability enhancement, I would have tumbled all over the place as my rocket caught any kind of little pocket, of air. And I would have to control that manually. But Jebediah Kerman, he's a good enough pilot, he can do it himself. I'm approaching my highest point. As you can see, in 1 minute I will reach my highest point. I actually did not get I didn't get an equatorial orbit. The equator is about right here. So I'm definitely not correct, but that's okay. That's alright, we're not going to worry about it too much. Alright, I'm almost at my highest point. I'm going to burn. And as you can see, when we mouse over, our highest point is actually getting away from us. Let's bring up the nav ball. Our highest point is actually moving away from us slowly. That's what we want. And you can see on the left and on the right, our orbit, or our points of landing and takeoff. Obviously, we took off from here, but our orbit might eventually come back around. How much fuel do we have? We got about half our fuel left. I don't think we're going to make it. It doesn't look like I brought what I needed. I didn't bring enough fuel, perhaps. I'm not sure. You can still see my speed is increasing. Ever increasing, ever increasing. I perhaps went too high. My highest point is getting away. Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. Our highest point, 125,000 meters. Our lowest point, 72,000 meters. We hit it. We are in orbit. No matter what we do now, we'll not come back down to the planet. You can speed up and adjust time using these buttons up here, or using the bracket keys. So I can speed up time, go back to the first person view. We're kind of flying around to the dark side of the moon. You can see Jebediah Kerman down there. He's extremely happy. Let's take a first person view. He can see space. Let's get him rotated. Oh, there's the moon. I believe that's his only port hole as well, yeah. Let's continue to spin. Can we find Earth? Not Earth. Kerbin. Can we find Kerbin? Turns out space is pretty big. Oh, there it is. There it is. Awesome. Let's go back out of first person. Let's speed up time. And we'll get around to the bright side of the planet. Gonna have the sunrise any moment now. There it is. Beautiful. We can have Mr. Jebediah get on out. EVA. And let go. He can use his little bit of monopropellant. He can fly around. Obviously, this is very similar to that first kind of scenario that we performed, where it was just Jebediah Kerman out in orbit. Very cool. Just let him admire that sunlight for just a minute. Can I get the camera to face? There he goes. He's so happy. So happy. Alright, let's head back inside. Let's see if we can't bring this ship home. See if we can't bring Jebediah home. I may not have enough fuel. Grab the ladder, climb up, and jump back in. Alright. Now, what's the best way for us to descend? Well, remember this is our highest point, our apoapsis, 125,000. This is our lowest point, 72,000. Now, I haven't explained this before, but this is an important part of, I guess, orbital mechanics. Wherever I expend fuel, or wherever I expend energy, you will see the change on the opposite side of the orbit. That means that if I spend energy here at my periapse, my lowest point, my highest point will change. I have almost no fuel left. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think I'm going to get him down. But we're going to try. So, what that means is, since this is my lowest point, this is my best place to enter. I would have to spend a lot more energy going from 125,000 to 0. Not necessarily 0, but the idea being that 0 is the planet. It would take me more to go from 125 to 0 than it would take me to go from 72 to 0. So I don't want to expend any energy here. I want to expend it all here at my highest point. The highest point and the lowest point will always be opposite each other. And sure enough, if you look, we're in a little bit of an elliptical orbit. And here's my lowest point. What this means is, at my highest point, I want to burn to slow myself down. Whoops. Wow, as I said that, I accidentally throttled up and made my job even harder. Wow. I don't think Jebediah is going home. That's alright. What we can do is, on our orbit, we can left click and add a maneuver. And you'll see, you'll get these same symbols as you see on the nav ball here. Depending on which symbol I pull on, it will be as if I am thrusting in that direction. Remember this symbol right here on the nav ball? That means that I'm facing toward where my orbit is going. So if I were to burn where my orbit is going, let's see what would happen. I'll burn. Oh, this is a fake burn, by the way. I'm not really doing this. But look at that. My orbit's actually going up. This side became my highest point. This side became my lowest. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We don't want to do that at all. Let's cancel this maneuver. Let's go to our highest point. We'll add another. So I want to then burn the opposite direction of my orbit. I want to burn my orbit away, or burn it down. And as you can see, the orbit is actually shrinking. Now 20,000 is well within the atmosphere. For sure. Once I hit that atmosphere, the friction is going to slow me down. So I don't have to get to 0. I have to get just underneath 70. And it has to be a decent amount underneath 70 as well. It can't be like 68. That will eventually slow me, but I'll do, I think, 30 or 40 rotations before I lose enough speed to the atmosphere to where I'll actually descend. So it doesn't really matter as much how much I need to burn. If I wanted to set it to something specific, I could. I just know that when I get to my apoapse, my highest point, I need to burn. It's called retrograde, away from the current direction that I am traveling, away from my current orbit. Let's go back in. My node, I will arrive there in 14, you can't see it, 14 minutes. So I will time accelerate a little bit. 11 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to have enough fuel. We'll see. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Alright. Whoops. Alright, node in 20 seconds. So let me go ahead, line up, retrograde, away. The blue is showing where my maneuver, that maneuver that I just created, where I need to be pointing. Sure enough, it lines up. We're going to burn all the fuel that we have in the hopes of getting Jebediah home. Let's see if we can do it. Go. Alright, that was it. That's all we've got. Let's take a look. We will cancel this maneuver. Our highest point, 143. Our lowest point, 47. I think that's going to get it. I think that's going to get us back in there. Alright, we can go ahead and detach this last piece of our fuel. Alright, now I could have, I think, shot it towards the planet and it would probably have landed. It would have crash landed. Right, ideally we don't want to leave space debris in space, right? Because that's just littering and that's not nice. So I detached it when it was in this orbit, so it would eventually fall back down to the planet, so that's good. Alright, so we're going to speed up some time. I'm going to slow it down. I'm still not quite there yet. I'll speed it up again. Alright. Good, so we've fallen back into the orbit. So let's see now. Speed up time again. You see our periaps, you see our lowest point is falling. So we are already in the atmosphere. Our speed is being shaved off, and that's why our periaps is falling. It's unfortunately falling very slowly. That's going to have to pick up a lot. I don't know if it's going to. We may be here for another rotation or two. I'm not sure. Before we point ourselves the wrong direction. Now our heat shield needs to be facing the direction that we're traveling, so we want to point away from the direction we're traveling. And let's speed it up. Still at 50, 49, 48. As you can see, my lowest point is falling away from me now. And it looks like it's falling away from me faster than I can catch up to it. Which means that yes, it will take a while, but we will get back from space very soon. Well, I said a while and very soon. I'm speeding up time, and so therefore it will be very soon. Try to make sure we're pointed the correct location, or the correct direction. I'm actually coming in pretty shallow, but I don't think that will matter. Eventually, I think it will. Look at that, my highest point. I'm actually coming up on my highest point. Or I will say my highest point is catching up to me. But yes, we're descending now. It's great. The friction in the atmosphere is bleeding off our speed, slowly, but it's doing it. And because we're losing that speed, we're descending. Unfortunately, because I'm moving, I'm doing 4 times normal speed. Let's slow down time. There we go. We're re-entering. So I'm pointing away from my projected path, away from my projected, technically not an orbit any longer. It looks like I'm going to land somewhere right here on this big piece of land. But my heat shield is facing the correct way. Can I check my heat? I cannot. I believe there's a mod that will tell you if you're heating up, if certain pieces are heating up. But I think we're going to be okay. I think Jebediah Kerman is going to make it. Under 30,000 now. Yeah, look at that heat shield heating up. But it's still in good shape. Look at how fast our speed is bleeding off. We were going, what, 3,000 meters per second? We're already half that now. I love that sound. So once our speed drops underneath a certain amount, the friction will no longer be causing such heat, and the burn effect will die off. Eventually. There we go. Looks like we might land in the mountains. I sure hope the rescue helicopters can get there. We are slowly losing our electrical charge. That's just to keep our stability going. We can turn that off, and just that'll kind of let it, like the wind just kind of carry us or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We'll turn it back on just to be stable, but technically we'll slowly bleed off, I think. Yeah. We'll have plenty, however. So I'm not deploying my final stage yet, which is my parachute. I just want to get a bit closer to the ground first. The parachutes in this game are a little magical. They do nearly instantly, I believe, slow your speed. As far as I know, they can't like break off and detach. I think at 5,000 I will deploy. There we go. It doesn't do it instantaneously, but it's starting to bleed off my speed even more. Oh, looks like I'm going to land right on the beach. Maybe even in the water. Come on, beach. I need the vacation. 2,000 feet. Jebediah is still happy as ever. Happy he gets to come back home. Happy he's not stuck out in space. Alright, I believe at 500. Yeah, the parachute's going to open fully, slow me down 6 meters a second. That's survivable, for sure. And we've survived our first orbit. All hail the Kerbal Space Program. This is obviously a tiny, tiny offering of what you can actually do in this game. It would take hours upon hours to actually showcase everything, and I'm honestly not good enough to do it. EVA, get out. Let go. Alright. Well, that's one small step for Kerbals or something like that, right, Jebediah? Let's plant a flag. Boink. Yay. Site name. The beach. The relaxing beach. Here our ancestors took their first great step into a wider nice and relaxing. Alright, this has been a relaxing look at Kerbal Space Program. Thanks guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.